We are, yeah, where are we? Off. Okay, so we are, yes, let's just work out what we're up to. We got to the top of Chof, no, not Chof Aleph, Chof base. No, Chof Aleph on a base. Yes, Chof Aleph on a base. Chof Aleph on a base, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5 lines down. Or on the ninth, yeah. So the ninth line, the end of the line. Now, just to recap briefly, so we were learning this fascinating sugya of chinuch, and basically the Gemora goes through lots of different aspects and attitudes towards education, particularly in school, the schooling system, how the schooling system was established. We dealt with all sorts of fascinating things, like how there was a need, minimal, maximum class size numbers, 25 children, and what do you do if you've got 40 kids in the town? You have to have an assistant teacher. And we go through these things which are incredibly contemporary in terms of the way there's a whole system was set out. Essentially, the school system was devised. Yeshua ben Gamla devised the school system because of the problem that people were no longer teaching at home. The kids were not being educated by their parents, and some people didn't have a parent, father who could do the job. So therefore, they managed to set up this system. However, there was also a need to keep on top of the quality of the teaching. And we finished, and really we're going to continue that today, because we finished off with this incredible story of what can go wrong. What can go wrong if a teacher doesn't take note? We finished off with the very last bit of the shir. Remember, was at Tosfos. There was a teacher who basically taught Yoav ben Tzruya, who was the general of King David HaMelech's army, and he taught him incorrectly. When he learned the pasuk of Timcha es Zecher Amalek, wipe out the memory of Amalek, he taught him Zochar Amalek. Tosfos says it wasn't that he read it wrongly. If he read it wrongly, then it wouldn't be his fault. Like he didn't know. He didn't know any better. The teacher made a mistake. He himself was taught wrongly by his teacher, right? It wasn't that he pronounced the words wrongly. He pronounced the words correctly, right? Timcha Zecher Amalek, wipe out the memory of Amalek, right? What he did though was he didn't make sure that the kids had followed correctly and the kids were repeating the word correctly. So Yoav, David HaMelech's general, learned it and remembered it from Cheder as Zochar Amalek, the males in Amalek. And that had disastrous consequences, because as a result, he was the one who was tasked with doing this, wiping out Amalek. And he ends up only killing the men and not the women. So it was a complete disaster, because he was supposed to wipe them all out. So therefore, you see, says the Gemara, just how bad it is. And in fact, there was a really hairy moment for the teacher, because Yoav approached him and said, how could you do this and everything else? And so, you didn't do it properly. And there was actually, we finished off with the machlokes whether he did kill him or not for his negligence in teaching. What you see from here, though, from the story, is just how careful one has to be to make sure that those under one's charge, actually learn correctly, and especially in the context of children. And the Gemara continues really on that theme. Omar Rava says Mikri Unuka. So he gives a whole list of people who effectively, if they do something wrong, it's not really retrievable. Mikri Unuka, which is a teacher of children. A Shasla, Rashi says, is noter karmo lemechza, someone who plants his vineyard, lemechza, which means half. In other words, sorry. No. It's not. It's not so much in Kalam. It's basically a Shasla is someone who plants it and sort of takes half the profit, I think, or something like that, right? Or as a sharecropper, exactly. He's exactly. So he gets a certain proportion of the crops, exactly, right? So that's what he is. And tabcha is a butcher, or sheikhet could be. But a tabcha v'umna, and umna is a bloodletter. Make his name v'sofer masa. Now Rashi says, the umna is the bloodletter, which is basically the doctor of those times, and sofer masa is a lavla. Rashi says, which is a sofer, a scribe. Now, all these people, Sofer Masters, the town scribes, Kulon, Kumasorin Va'om Din Ninhu. It's as if they have already been warned. In other words, they've already been told, don't mess up. Don't mess up what you're doing. Okay? And if they do, even if they don't receive a warning, okay, that's it. They've got to pay, or they've got to sort things out. Or in fact, Rashi says you can actually remove them from their position. Rashi says, if you look at the last wide line in Rashi, they shouldn't mess up. If they do mess up, you can remove them without warning. Even if they didn't warn them beforehand. And the reason the Gemora gives is Klal de Milsa, the general rule is like this: any loss which cannot be retrieved, it's as if they've already been warned. It's as if they've already been warned. So this is a Peseda de lo Hoda. In other words, if you're involved in an occupation which is not retrievable, you can't do it again. You can't say, well, I'll try again, right? You killed the animal. If you mess up the shechita, the animal's gone. Yes, you can't then make it kosher again, right? It's finished. Yeah. If you teach the children incorrectly, that's the shocking thing, right? You can't really retrieve it. You can't retrieve what you've done wrong, and therefore, as a result, they can be removed without a warning in the first place. You can remove them straight off. The Gemora says.
A butcher is not a
So we translate tabcha as a butcher. I think it means a shochet.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, from the context. I mean, I don't know whether you've got any insights there from your, but I think it means a shochet. I have in the back.
Also trade things up.
A butcher can also mess things up. Could do exactly, yes. He could do the kashering correctly or whatever. Exactly, he could do the nikkur hagid, removing the gid and all sorts of things that are doing correctly. That's right. That's right. I think it means either way. It's someone who you can't things he can't correct. Now, I mean, Rashi clearly implies this. So if you look at the next Rashi, Peseda Dorei Hodar. Yeah. That's right, because that's what the klal of the Gemara gives is kol Peseda Dorei Hodar. Not only these are just examples. Kol Peseda Dorei Hodar Musar Amidu. Any case which is a Peseda Dorei Hodar where you cannot retrieve it, it's lost. The loss is there forever. You cannot. It's as if they've already been warned not to ruin it. So Rashi says, after the animal becomes a nevela, right? Always remember, always remind yourself there's a difference between a nevela and a treifa, right? A nevela is an animal which has not been shechted correctly. A treifa is an animal which is going to die, and therefore shechita will not assist you because it's a treif animal. It's a treifa. It's an animal which has got like a hole in the heart or something, whatever. It's not going to survive. That's the difference. And a nevela is roadkill, or an animal which has been shot, or an animal, or you know what I mean? Something that's an nevela, right? That's an nevela. So therefore, if the animal has been or the bloodletter, the next example, the bloodletter, the doctor kills the patient, right? But he can't get it back. Yes, you can't you can't sort of like say, well, we'll try again.
For kids, you can correct.
So we've got to come back to the kids in a second. That's the problem here. Yes, for Hasofer, cost of Sefer Torah Batos. Sofer writes a Sefer Torah Batos. You can't retrieve it. What's the problem with that? That's a bit of a problem, that isn't it? You can correct it. So there are no. You can correct it. It's fixable. So there's another exactly. Okay. So there's a number of problems here. Basically, you can already see there's a number of problems. The Gemara sets out a klal, which you can immediately understand, right? The klal makes sense. The klal is if you're involved in a trade or a business or anything else, right? It doesn't have to be. The examples here are not all clay kodesh. The guy who's planting is not a clay kodesh. He's a regular guy. He works as a sharecropper, whatever, right? It's not about what you're doing. It's about if you're involved in an occupation whereby it's not retrievable. If you make a mistake, then you don't get a chance. That means to say you don't get like, I'll make sure next time to get it right. You have to assume you've already been warned. Don't mess it up. Rashi says that means the nafkamina is that you can remove them without warning. So they lose their job straight off. That's what it means, right? So there's a number of questions here. Number one, are all these examples actually things which you can't, the examples given in the Gemara, are they all things which actually you can't retrieve? Okay. Number two, how do you define a pseudo de lo hoda, a loss which cannot be what's the right word? Reversed. Because surely most of these you can just by paying money. Right? Let's say you mess up the animal. You chef the animal incorrectly. Okay? So fine, so you've got to pay. I mean, it's very expensive, Cow is very expensive. You mess up the shechita of a cow, it's a serious business. As an average number, person eats I don't know how many cows a person eats. The average person eats per year. I remember this statistic from gated yeshivas where the amount of meat they used to go through was just such huge quantity. It's a lot of meat on an animal. Average person will eat enough meat of an animal in like a year or something. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot of meat. It's a lot of money, right? But either way, you can pay it back. So why is that Peseda de Lehoda? Yeah, you see the problems? So Tosfos deals with the number of these issues. If we look at the top Tosfos, Sofer Masa, the Lokamesh Berish Kosef Sefer Torah B'tos. He says he disagrees with Rashi. It's not someone who writes a Sefer Torah incorrectly. He makes mistakes in Torah. That ain't Peseda de Lehoda. That's not a loss that can't be retrieved. You can put it correct. You can fix the Sefer Torah. Elo kedeprecious lael kosef shtoros. Someone who writes documents. Here's the Sofer Masa. Tosfos, we learned this Tosfos, same Tosfos goes with Shitoso. We learned Tosfos last week, where Tosfos says on the previous Omid, he has the same thing. Sofer Masa on the previous page, if you remember, Rashi learned, the case there was, we're talking about things you can't rent out your property to. And it says one of the things is a Sofer Yehudi. And we says, what do you mean? A Sofer Yehudi, you have a right to use. That was the whole way the Gemora started. Basically, the Gemora was saying you're allowed to. The whole thing this came from was basically the sugya of saying that what are you allowed to use? What is a legitimate use of your property if you're in a chotzer, you share courtyard, right? And a legitimate use is to open a school because that's what. So you've got. We need to open schools and that's the right thing to do and everything else. But not if it's a Sofer Masa. What is a Sofer Masa? Rashi says Sofer Masa is somebody who teaches children. And he teaches the teachers. That he's not teaches children. He teaches the teachers how to teach children. So there's a massive noise. You start opening a teacher training academy in your back garden. Other people can object if they share that space with you. It's a shared chotzer. Tosfos disagrees. Tosfos says no. Tosfos says no. And his proof, Tosfos' proof on Amud Aleph, was from here. Because this Brisa, this statement, not Brisa, what is it? It's Rava. This statement of Rava lists Mikra Yenuka, right? Mikra Yenuka, which is a teacher, and a Sofer Masa. So the Sofer Masa cannot be another form of a teacher. It must be something else. And therefore Tosfos says, what is a Sofer Masa? A Sofer Masa is a scribe, someone who writes shtoros, someone who writes documents. Now that is not retrievable. Because if you write a shtar shalokadin, if you write the document incorrectly, that is, in many circumstances, many situations, you're finished. Because if you write, let's say you're out of zero, and the guy has got the money, and the document is signed by Adim, it's finished, right? It's like you pay. They warn you. If you transfer the money to the wrong account, these horrific warnings.
So are we talking here monetary loss?
Yeah, no. It's
as in like.
Tosfos says you can't pay. No, it's not monetary loss.
The definition of the case is going off stuff. We're dealing with monetary loss. We're dealing with making mistakes with regard to mitzvahs.
No. We're dealing with even worse than monetary loss. We're dealing with a person who is occupied in a certain trade. That money, if you make a mistake, a bad mistake, right? Paying money will not help solve the problem.
Because he's a professional that has a chazaka to do things right. Once he's proven to be doing them consistently wrong, then everything is done in the past. If he's a butcher that's been trafing stuff, then how long you don't know how far back his trafing goes. If it's a guy, a scribe, you don't know if he's been writing kasulas and gittin that are all wrong.
I think that's true. That's true. However, I don't even think you need to necessarily go that far into it, right? If you make an animal trafe, okay, and you don't earn up till 2 days later. Well, that's Peseda de Lohona because everyone's eaten the meat already. That's what it means. You with me?
Yeah.
These are all cases where you can't. Restitution is not going to help. If you've written the document, if you've written a get, for example, Sofer's written a get and it's possible, and Nebuch, she's gone off and got married on the basis of that get. Well, the mamzerim, if there's, I'm taking an extreme example. She's got married illegitimately. You can't fix that. I mean, of course, you can fix it. So she has to divorce, whatever, fine. Whatever, she has to leave the husband. It's not fixable. No amount of money is going to solve that problem. Does that make sense?
Right, so we're not really doing financial agreement.
That's what Tosfos says. It's not about money. It's not about money.
So does this
Although he doesn't really go into money. So the truth is, he says, well, okay, let's see the other Tosfos and you'll see, because it will come.
So there's this also, I don't know if it's a direct or indirect link to Gemora and Chagi when it talks about something that's twisted, you can't undo.
Yes, well, remind me the context.
The context there is,
it
deals with regard to
it's supposed to be Koheles, but it comes in other places, yeah.
And dealing with regard to Rabbonim as well, that gone off the derech, but there's no, once you're off, you can go in sugar that really help.
That's right. Yeah. The twisted thing cannot be made. Yes, in brachos, that's right. A number of places the Gemara brings us. In other words, there are situations and scenarios where you can't make it 100% as it was. You can do your best, but you can't fix it. You can always do tshuva. Tshuva is a different thing. Tshuva works differently because tshuva can uproot the act, right? Although even then, it doesn't mean it can make right the issues, but it can correct the avera that the person has done through full tshuva. But that's not the same as the outcomes may still be a problem. It's not like you know, like mamzerus, for example, right? A person who let's say bemazed father's mamzera, right? The mamzerim are a metzias, that they're a fact in the world. You're not going to remove the mamzera. The person who kills someone, Nebuch, right? Can he do tshuva? Famous question. Like philosophically, it's very difficult to get your head around. How can you do tshuva? The person's dead. You can. It's a remarkable thing. He can do tshuva. Yeah, the process of tshuva you can still go through. It's incredibly difficult to do that type of tshuva, right? It's not a simple thing. It doesn't work like this is obviously going to be a very deep and complex tshuva, and maybe a tshuva the rest of his life, whatever it is. But the fact is tshuva is always possible, but it doesn't bring the person back to life. Yeah. But I think that works in a different way to what we're describing here, because this is more in Choshen Mishpat. This is more about Choshen Mishpat, right? If a person is involved in something where it's a peseda de lo hada, they make a mistake, it's not going to be recoverable, there will be a loss which will be permanent, then it's as if they've been warned not to do that in the first place. And if they make, it's one strike and you're out. Okay? Now look at the next Tosfos. Mikri Dardaki, Pirish B'kuntrish V'makabel, Doli peseda de lo hadra. So Rashi learns in Bava Metzia, not here, that the reason why a teacher of children is a peseda de lo hada, right? Is a non-retrievable loss. Like we learned last week, a mistake, once it's gone in, it's gone in. That's what those words mean. Shibush is a mistake. It's gone in, then it's gone in. Finished, right? Aramaic. The kosher the harova gufei is leil, the shabeshta memela nafka. It's a stira, because Rava is the author of this statement. And Rava held on Omid Aleph. Remember, we saw machlokas, yeah? We saw machlokas, fascinating machlokas, where you got a choice between a teacher who knows his stuff really well, but isn't so careful how the children learn it, but he's really good, big time chacham, right? Or you've got another teacher, he doesn't know his stuff so well, he's not such a time chacham, but he's really careful about the kids. Yeah, who do you go with? And it's actually a machlokas, and everyone says, oh, of course you go with the teacher who's careful, and that's what we would assume. And that's what Rav Dimi Ben Hardot says, and he brings the proof from this story of Yov, where he made a mistake and everything else. But Rava actually had a dissenting view. Rava held, Shabeshka Memela Nafka. Mistakes can be corrected, they just come out, they go out in the wash. The kid will learn incorrectly, but sooner or later they'll put it right.
Also, it's very where you draw the line, because most people make mistakes at some point, and therefore who's a habitual mistake maker rather than someone who just
it's true. It's an amazing thing. We're setting the bar. It's frightening to be a school teacher. I don't know. I'm scared. He's setting the bar so high. It's amazing. You're setting the bar so high. It's so difficult. It teaches us, and I think it's a really good mussar, like almost for how much respect we should have for good teachers especially of Koda. The mysterious nefesh they need to have, if they're doing the job well, is immense. Anyway.
And we say specifically not about the story of Rabbi Meir and Acha.
Yes.
We said that specifically Rabbi Meir was the level that you could pick out the good things and the bad things and go with it, whereas everyone else should be.
Is that what it was? Because he learned from him still, didn't he? From Acha. Yeah. That's amazing stories of Acha, yeah. Okay, when a Rameir was already with children, you don't have that luxury, right? Children are going to absorb everything. Anyway, the problem is that you've got a straight contradiction according to Rashi. It's a beautiful kasha, yeah? Because Rava is the one who says that mistakes go out of their own accord. If so, it's not Peseda de lo hada. It's not a mistake that can't be corrected, because Rava himself holds that mistakes that are learned are mistakes. And look at the way he answers it. But it is such an important lesson. But Omeri, so the Re says the Hava Peseda de lo hada. You know why it's a loss that can't be corrected? To Osashah, because that moment in time, Shemelamed lahem tos. Yeah, it's you see that? It's on the other there. Sorry, the bottom of this one. Let's see, it's like over there. Yeah, got it. Yeah, so it says like this. Yeah, that time he teaches them a mistake. They don't learn, and you can never bring that time back. Isn't that a beautiful shot? Yeah. The Reese says that it's nothing to do with the fact that he made a mistake, and according to Rava, that's not a problem, or it is a problem, but it's correctable. The point is not what you can't correct is the teacher that wastes the kids' time by teaching them the wrong stuff. They've lost that time forever. It's frightening. I mean, that's his pshat. Okay, so that's why it's not reversible. Finally, there's, I know you don't do all this, but these three go together. The final one is the shasla, which is the one who does this planting. And here he asks the question about you can repay. Hold on a second, this guy's working, he's a sharecropper, split the profit 50-50. So what if you mess it up? So what if you don't do plant correctly? Pay back, not a problem. If there's a pseudo, you pay back, you repay. It says Toras, he's not a loss, he's negligent. So it's not it's not the fact that he causes a loss in that way. In other words, the loss can be repaid, but he's negligent in the sense that they don't grow as they should. So why is that Pseudo de Hada? Yeah. Meaning you can't. It sounds like it's something that's not claimable. It's not actionable. You can't prove it. They could have grown this high and they didn't because he didn't.
You should know if it was planting correctly. By definition, if something planting correctly, and if it had planted, it would have been X.
Well, it sounds like that. It sounds like it's something which it's difficult to prove. Yeah, but it's not.
Then you can always say, well, the weather wasn't so good, too much, the soil acidity was too high.
Exactly. Yeah.
The kids weren't so bright.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't be a say to with it in the first place.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a little Marsha here. The Marsha says that basically the reason why Tosfos only asked the question on the gardener and doesn't ask it about the shochet, doesn't ask about the sofa, same thing, you can pay back. All these things you can pay back. The sofa can buy a new sofa Torah. It's all repayable. He says you can have it could be the situation with the shochet could be it could be that he's working for free. Maybe he's doing it as a favor. Does as a favor and he works up and he messes up. There's nothing to pay. He's just lost. It's a permanent loss. I could have given a different answer as the one we said before. The people already eating the treif. That would be a reason why it's another reason it's Beseda de Lohada. The sofa masa, it says it with the sofa masa, you can't make him pay. That's what Tosfos learns. So we learned before. I gave you a shot before that I thought it's because someone might have already acted on the basis of the documents being produced incorrectly, like someone got married already or someone already claimed the money, whatever. Tosfos says the reason why Tosfos hasn't got a question from the scribe, from the person who's writing the documents, is because it's not actionable in a court of law, because it's groma. It's indirect action. It's in the groma ben Ezekiel. If you try and bring that sofa to court and say you caused this loss because you added a zero incorrectly, so he had to claim. Let's leave aside the Mamzera's case. Posha case of a regular case of a shtar, a regular case of a document, a business transaction. You added a zero, you pay. It's groma, it's indirect. So no, you won't have to pay. You won't have to pay. So that's the. Whereas the shasla, it sounds like it is.
Why is it groma if it's paid specifically because of that error? Isn't that direct? So groma is itself a whole massive question and suga. What exactly is groma? But as someone who is mafsid shtarosov shel chaveroi, I think is a classic example, if I'm not mistaken, of groma. If you mess up, if you destroy someone's documents, I think it's indirect. It's not being done the wrong thing, you get punishment Hashemayim, whatever, but it's a question actionable. And yeah, exactly. It's something which leads to something else. It's something which leads to something else, and that creates a problem.
The English case recently, the woman who sued the doctor for not advising her mother about folic acid. She was born with swine.
Oh, I think I remember reading about this.
Recent.
Did she succeed?
Yeah, I think she did.
Wow, that's really interesting.
That's not wrong.
Yeah. So just the Nimuki Yosef here adds like a little bit here, which is really helpful in terms of understanding this specific case, the case of the gardener. He says, "Shunotea kromim." You can see if it's about. If you want to follow in the back, it's in Yudom and base in the Nimuki Yosef. I'll just read it out. If you've got it's not in the back of the article. Shunotea kromim. He plants vineyards. Even if he repays the crop that he made a mistake in. You're right, he will have to pay his negligence, but he doesn't pay for the loss of profit that they might have made had they grown really well. And maybe that's because you can't exactly prove what it is, that's indirect, that's a potential future gain which he's made you lose out on. So this is not something you should you'd have to pay. Yeah. And interestingly, he goes on to say that the case of a shochet who makes the animal treif, even though he has to pay, it's a pseudo deloy hodar. If you invited guests on the basis of this animal, you're not going to be able to get that back. There is an opinion of Rav Shimon Gamliel, he brings in Amoicha Peiros, who says that you have to pay for Dmei Boshes Orchov, the payment, the value of the embarrassment of your guests. But we don't hold like that, and therefore it's not repairable. It's not retrievable, that loss. It's not retrievable, that loss. Similarly with the bloodletting, the doctor who messes up, right? Even if he doesn't kill the guy, he doesn't have to pay the tsar for the sickness he's caused. That's quite a big chiddush. Doctor doesn't have to pay for that. Okay. And then anyways, this is how it is. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so this is a little interesting piece which kind of connects the previous bit, but it stands on its own in a certain way. Let's carry on with the Gemora.
Point there for Toras.
Yeah.
On Rabbah. It feels like the Rabbah's, the question can be asked on, there must be many more cases than these 5.
Yes.
Because you could
he brings a klal. That would have.
So it's not just okay. So Toras,
yes.
The chiddush then in Toras is that there are these scenarios based on these 5 which are unique.
Tosfos says that the Tosfos wants to find a scenario where you can't. He says the cases have to be. It seems according to Tosfos where you can't get your money back, or at least not in full. Not in full.
But there must be other.
There will be other cases, yeah.
There must be loads of other cases like that.
Definitely.
So why is Rabbi only?
Oh, I suppose he's giving you the most common examples. Yeah. You can. Yeah. I mean,
these are people that are accepted as experts in their field, and therefore they're not more, because you're assuming that I come and say I'm a shopkeeper,
yeah, I'm
trusted for that job.
That's interesting. Yeah, is that the reason though? That's the question, because the reason he gives is pseudo deloy hadar.
But the Gemara says you don't warn them.
Why? Because they are doing a job which is you don't get another chance at. If you're a doctor. Yeah, I mean, no pressure, Jeremy. But if no, of course there's indemnity and you can only do your best and we're all human. You know all that, right? But ultimately, there is a certain point where there are certain professions where you have to make a decision. And at that point, am I right? I'm not. I mean,
there's difference between a guy who's on a first aid course and there's someone who's set up as a doctor. So I'm saying, the doctor, someone who's an expert at being a doctor. He comes, I'm the doctor, I make decisions, and therefore. You don't warn him beforehand that if you make a mistake,
because it's assumed that his knowledge is there, etc., etc. Yeah, but the implication of Rava is that that alone wouldn't quite be enough. I hear what you're saying, but he doesn't really. He goes a bit further than that. He says it has to be a pseudo deloy hoda. Has to be something where you can't. It's not, the losses are not entirely recoverable, and even if they're recoverable to a certain extent, but there are elements of it that are not recoverable.
Because he's an expert.
But they're not. I mean, are they all experts? Is the Shasla, the sharecropper, such an expert? Maybe he is. It could be that. I mean, it's interesting. It could be that that's a component of it. Yeah. You rely on the fact that they don't need to be warned because, yeah.
I'm just thinking about. I mean, an obvious one would be a rabbi who is, for example, doing the Sabbath Kedushin.
Yes.
And gets it wrong.
Yes.
Wrong, and therefore that person. Couple are not technically.
Yes, that is. No, because firstly that's governed. First, there is a set of halachas around that, right? It's called Ter B'Dvar Mishnah. It depends what the mistake was. Okay, it depends whether the mistake was a mistake in learning, which is a more serious matter. Whether he needs to rectify or not, or whatever. Whether there are, it depends on the circumstance, right? Was it a case of negligence? Was it a case of a case of, for example, every scenario can be different. You can have a situation in a marriage where the couple, the Rav might have done nothing wrong at all, but he might have been faced with a b'diavad situation. As long as the psak he gives is an acceptable halachic psak, then that's fine. You're talking about a situation where he says something wrong. He does something wrong. I don't know, whatever. There's no ring or something. Something that. So then there are situations, I think, when the rabbi has a level of responsibility to. You're not talking about a financial issue there.
No, I'm thinking about, for example, he doesn't ensure that the chosn owns the ring.
Right.
So
Yes.
The chosn doesn't know, borrowed the ring from his
Yes.
friend.
Yes.
Well, the consequences, they probably get married in another way anyway, ultimately. So I'm not sure.
No, because once they think they're married, there's all types of things that come off that, aren't there? So,
No, but they probably would end up being married, I'm saying.
because of beer.
Okay. So again, it depends what you mean. I mean, if your question is your question, does he need to put it right?
No, you can't. My question is.
Well, he can put it right from going forward. But what do you mean?
Because they.
What is there to pay? How can you pay?
It's a change of status.
Right.
Through an error, there's a change of status.
Yeah.
Which cannot be undone.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So this is a similar scenario here, but it's
There are
much more abstract.
Yeah. Okay, so basically your question is, what about when you're involved in a situation and a circumstance where an error is made and it's not a monetary thing? That's the point.
Or an object. It's not like a vineyard.
Yeah. And the level of responsibility I think that Rabbonim have in that situation, I mean, by the way, much worse than marriage is getting. Much worse. Because marriage, ultimately, you have to realize, the worst that can happen with marriage is they're not technically not married. They're not, as long as they're assuming they're living, as long as you go to the mikveh, it's a nida. You've got a ponui and a pnuya, potentially technically unmarried. That's not nearly as, it's not allowed. It's not nearly as bad as, no. Yeah, Rav Henkin would hold anyway. They would be halal. Yeah, they're anon sadi because they're living as husband and wife. That works as edus. We don't rely on that. Lechatchila, it means that she requires a get. Whatever. The point is gittin is much worse. If a beis din make a problem in a get, let's say they make a mistake in a get, which was a willful error, and then you've got major problems. Because then how do you fix that? But anyway, it's a whole other sugya. Let's carry on. So Omar Rav Huna. Hi bar mavur de oki rechayav oslam mavur chavri v'komoki gape. So Rav Huna says, if you got a bar mavur, what is a bar mavur? A bar mavur is someone who is basically in a lives in a mavui, lives in an alleyway. And he sets him a millstone. And the other bar, someone who's in the same, he's in the same mavui, the same cul-de-sac as him, and he sets up his own millstone. Right? We're talking about competition law now. Do you know who he can stop him? Rav Huna comes along and says, you can stop him setting up his own millstone to sell. You're stopping my job. You are preventing me from earning a living. You're not allowed to do that, which is illegal, he says. That's what he says. So that's Rav Huna's chiddush. Now the Gemora says, we can support this from the following halacha, which is machikim metzudas hadog min hadog kimaloi ritzas hadog. You have to distance the run or the trap, of the dog, of a fishing trap from the fish. The amount that it takes the amount that it is for the fish to run, the run that the fish has, and what that means is that other fishermen have to move their traps away that distance. So you've got a fisherman who has identified a certain hole or a certain place that the fish live in, and he's already set himself up to capture them. And the other fisherman has to move away from his little bit of patch of sea or patch of river, because this is his bit of river. Kimalori to Sadog, the amount that particular place that he goes to. So this, pardon?
I mean, it's like a custom. It's like a what do you call it?
License.
Custom of the place. You don't start
That's
jumping
right.
a rod and put it next to someone else.
That's right. Yeah. 100%. This is Masigable. Exactly what this is. You have opened, Afuna says, you have opened a shop in your house, which you're allowed to do before, as we said, D1 use came along, all that type of thing. You open a shop and you are selling stuff from your house. You are grinding and making grains, grinding grains, everything else. And someone decides, that's a nice idea. I'll do that too. I'll set up my own shop, set up a competition across the street, literally across the street. Rafuna says you can stop him. And the Gemora says it seems to be a support from this case. The Kama, how much is on Rafuna at Parsa, up to a Parsa, which is quite a lot, quite a bit more than your fishermen sitting side by side. Shani Dogim, the Gemara says no proof from there because fish is different. The Yahweh Siara. The Yahweh Siara. What does it mean, Yahweh Siara? So they look to become accustomed to go to a certain place that they have seen the food, the bait in this case. And therefore, since he's identified, the fish has identified this particular place, and he's put food in that run where the fish is going to go to, he's surely going to catch the fish. Okay, and it's as if he already is holding the fish, and that's why the other person is not allowed to take it away. You with me? It's different. There, the fact that you've set yourself up and you've identified the place where the holder is going to be, and it sounds like you've already put the trap down as well, the food, maybe even the trap as well, or the food certainly to catch the fish. It seems to be there was like a. It seems to be like he's like this fisherman has like made some sort of hole. Yeah, but he's made some sort of hole in the sand or something.
Using pipes and baskets.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, back in lakes. That's how.
Okay. So the fish is going to run into the basket.
So basically, the fish got pipes and the basket.
Yeah. It's all in Bates of this about the biborin, I think. It's not in the anyway. So that's what it is. So there's running there. So that's different, because that's fundamentally different to the case of you setting up a shop for something, and the guy sets up a competitor, because he can turn around and say, honestly, they got a choice. Competition is good. They come to me, they come to you. Well, you're just like that. They'll choose where to go to.
It's like the bakers and girls.
We're saying like this. There's a fundamental distinction. Yes, like bakers and girls.
Don't they have to ask for Shiloh?
There's more.
Yeah, this is the Shiloh. This is the sugya, or one of the sugyas, right? This is the Shiloh. This is exactly the question, right? Are you allowed to do that? How far away? Is it considered Masigavol? Is it not? Here, we're talking one Movri that's really close. If you're allowed to do this, then there'll be a lot of Kavul Chomas in other settings. Yeah, this is in one Movri. It's in one alleyway. Remember, the alleyways were like very small, like thing like Carl this out there. These guys across the road from me, right? There is a fundamental difference, says the Gemara, between the case of the fish and the case of the Chaim. The case of the Chaim, the case that's to do with the fish. The case of the fish, he says, if you're taking it out of the trap. Why? Because since the guy has set it up, whatever it was, the hole and the basket and the pipes and everything else, and the food, the bait, the fish is as if the fish is in the trap. The fish does not have very much intelligence. The fish is going to go that direction, right? If you go along and set up an alternative trap next to it, you are directly taking the fish out of the fisherman's mouth. Whereas if you have a shop selling grain, grinding millstones and selling grain on one side of the street, and I set up a shop on the other side of the street, your customers haven't gone to your shop yet. They now have a choice. They can go to you or they can go to me. You don't sound happy.
I don't see the difference.
Because the fish are there already. The fish are there. Once you've put the fish, this is Ritzas Hadok. This is the direction the fish go. They are going to go, they're going to go from point A straight into point B.
So to Jeremy's point, the same is true with the mill. The moment you set up your mill and nobody has an alternative, they're all going to come to you.
No, but the difference is that this is the Ritzas Hadok. People have intelligence, fish don't.
Okay.
So that's the point, right? The fish, it's like literally, it's as if you've got the fish in your basket now. The fish are not going to go anywhere else. Unless someone interrupts them on their journey, they are going to go into the basket. Remember, this fisherman has identified the channel, he's dug it or whatever, it's the fish are going to go straight into the basket, no questions asked.
So
That is not the same as people who have their own choice and they could just, maybe today they're going to go to a different mouth. Maybe they're not coming, who says, whatever, who knows where they're going to go. Nafkamin, big Nafkamin is you're allowed to open your shop across the road. Someone starts selling Parker pens and you think, oh, that's a good idea. I'll sell Parker pens. You are. Rav Huna says, no, sorry. Rav Huna says you're not. And the Gemara says, let's say we can support it from this case of the fish. Says the Gemara, Shani Dogim Diavi Siara, that the fish are on the track and therefore you're interrupting the fish. And that's where you can't stop the fish. But there's no proof for Rav Huna.
I still don't get, isn't it obvious that if you set up your millstone, you're going to detract from the other person's business in the same way that you set up your traps, your fish?
And you're not stealing. You can basically say, well, my flour's finer quality. It's a different product.
The fundamental question is here, is what is considered hezek? What is considered damaging? We're not dealing here with let's be clear, we're dealing with choshen mishpat. We've got to detach ourselves from feelings of not that that's not important, but in the context of this, we are dealing with legalities here. We're not dealing with, oh, is it a nice thing to do? Is it pleasant neighbor? Forget all of that, right? Is there a legal claim in court that you are damaging by opening your shop, you're damaging him? So the argument that Gemora is making, it's what we call a dichoi. It's not conclusive. You cannot prove from the fish case because it's not the same level of damage. It doesn't qualify as damage. You can make the argument that it doesn't qualify as damage to someone else to open the shop across the street, because Rashi uses we'll do all the Rashis, but just to quote you one line from Rashi, he says, "Misha bo etzli yovoy." Someone who comes to me will come to me, okay. Well, Misha bo etzli yovoy. Someone who wants to come to you will come to you. Their choice, not doing me.
That hasn't gone. It's cluster economics.
Yes, you can encourage.
Brings more people. It's also going to bring more fish into the area.
Yeah, 2 shops selling Parker pens. It brings all those buying presents for the bar mitzvah boy. It's great. That's how it is. They're all going to come here. Right?
Interesting that the specialty shops do congregate.
Yeah. In markets, like they have a market. Yeah. Flowers in Holland. Doctors in Holland. Yeah, that's true. Some of them do different things. Anyway, so that's how it is. So they want. That's what he says. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, let's see the Rashis properly. So Rashi says, where is it? Yeah, it's about 4 lines where it gets narrow. To grind, to rent out. A tzayad, well, here it's a tzayad, is literally a hunter, but here it's a fisherman. He sees the fish. So he observes the fish, he learns the fish's ways, and he recognizes the lair that the fish lives in. Other fishermen have to distance their traps from there. So you see that even though he hasn't yet taken hold and taken ownership of the fish, it hasn't actually reached his hand. You can distance other people from there, because he can say to him, you are taking away my livelihood. Chiyusi is like Chaim, my life. You're taking away my livelihood, and therefore he can distance in a way. The fundamental point that Rav Huna or the Gemora tries to prove from the fish case, yes, is the argument that even though a person hasn't yet taken ownership of something, okay, he still has a level of rights in law over the thing that he is expecting to take ownership over. That's kind of the Lomdisha point here. You with me? We're trying to work out what level of rights or ownership rights do you have over something you have not yet acquired? You have, it's like a potential. You've got the potential to own this thing. So we're saying, well, the fisherman can see the fish; it's going to come, and therefore he's got a level of ownership over it. And similarly, the guy who opens the shop, grinding the grain in the millstone, he knows the people are going to come, and it's as if he already has ownership of it. And therefore he can say to someone else, you are depriving me of something that I effectively have a right over it to some level. Therefore you're taking away my livelihood. But the Gemara says no, it's not a proof. Look at the next Rashi. Shani dogim ziyavi siara nosin ayin bahabotom. They literally place their eyes when they gaze. They are accustomed to run to the place where they've seen food. Hilkoch, therefore, Kivanchik is a chayro, since he's recognized the layer of the fish, and he's put food in the channel, he knows 100% that he's going to capture the fish. It's as if it's reached his hand, and it's as if his friend, by setting up his own fishing rod next to him, it's as if he is causing him damage. You have to understand that Rashi wants to get in the word hezek here. You could ask, why does Rashi need to enter the word damages? We have one Rashi, one after the other. Why is he mentioning hezek? Why can't he just say, Masigavu, you're taking away my parnasa? Because the question is this actionable in law? We haven't really come on to, the Gemara doesn't mention the word Masigavul. I mean, we're identifying it immediately as Masigavul. We have to maybe see, is this really the same as Masigavul? Is Masigavul something else? I'm not sure. But Rashi wants to go down the route here, you see clearly, of actionable damages. That's what he's entering this idea of the word hezek, yeah? It is an actionable claim in law of damaging me. Because the fish is definitely going to come to me, I own the fish. And because I own the fish, you're stealing from me. Not quite, but you're causing me damage in that way. Over here, someone wants to come to me, will come to me. Someone wants to come to you, will come to you. This is not something you can claim that I have taken away from you. That I've taken away from you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's just do a few more lines. Let's say Rav Huna, who holds that you cannot open the shop across the road. Let's say that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. There's a Mishnah in Bava Metzia which says, Rabbi Yehuda says, a shopkeeper is not allowed to distribute like shells and nuts to children. Why? Because he accustoms them, he gets them used to coming to him. He gets them used to coming to him. What's the problem with that? Yeah, it's marketing. Yeah, it sounds like because it's unfair competition with the others. It's unfair. He's breaking competition rules. But they could, but it sounds like it's okay. Well, let's just see what the Chacham say. The Chacham Matzirin, yeah, the Chacham say it's mutter. So the Chacham say it's mutter, and the Gemara wants to suggest that Rav Huna holds Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Huna says that even something which is a bit vague, that it's not clear exactly what you've done, you've set up something which is encouraging people to go in this direction instead of that direction. That's all you're doing, right? The Chenvi, the shopkeeper, is just giving out nuts. That's all he's doing. So similarly, the guy who's opened the millstone across the street, what is he doing? Just giving them another option, diverting them possibly to go to me. It's not definite. They can choose who to go, right? But it's encouraging to go in a different direction to you, like the shopkeeper. So this is like Rabbi Yehuda, but it says you're not allowed to do that. Anything which provides you with an unfair advantage, taking away potentially from someone else, is problematic. The Chacham say it's mutter. So the Gemara says no. I feel it same with Rabbanon. Even the Rabbanon might agree here that it's osir. Because Ad Kanu pligi Rabbanon later Rabbi Yehuda osir. Why does Rabbanon disagree with Rabbi Yehuda there? Because they say the Amalei, because he can say to him, the shopkeeper can say to the other guy, the other shopkeepers, Anor kamafogino amguzi. I'm distributing nuts. At plug shvisky. You distribute almonds. You're giving this treat to the kids, so you give another treat to the kids. What's the difference? I'm like you say, it's fair. I've got a special offer. You can also give a special offer, and that's why the Rabbanon say it's mutzah. But over here, I feel Rabbanon moidu. Even the Rabbanon will agree potentially to Amalek, because it says to him, you are interrupting my livelihood. You are stopping my livelihood because you're diverting customers away from me. So it's fundamentally different. You with me? We're saying that here it could be both Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda agree with Rav Huna, that opening the mill, across the street He set them up in the first place. He's become accustomed to make a profit in this way. And he comes to the same trade. He opens a shop to on the same business. You can say to him, you have interrupted my business. You have disturbed my trade. And that is, according to Rav Huna, that's actionable. So the Gemora is saying, could be that both Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda agree to Rav Huna that you're not allowed to do this. But the Gemara is going to go on to ask questions. Why? So we run out of time for today. But we'll have to recap a bit of this, obviously, for next time, Mitzvah Hashem, because we have a short break now. And we will reconvene. Mitzvah Hashem, not next week or week after that. Okay? Fine. Very good. Have a good evening. Welcome, Paul. Hey, thank you.